Welcome to Two Humans Talking, the podcast where we talk about the challenges of staying healthy in today's modern, fast-paced world. Today is such a special episode. I am here with my bestie, Erica. She's like my ride or die. She's the one who just gets all the phone calls. You know, we all have one of those people where it's just like, I'm not okay. What do I do? Am I being the crazy one? She's it. If you don't have one.
I come see you. I need a hug.
I just need a hug. That was like 2 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
And so today, the reason I share that with you is that one, this is really special for me to be able to bring her into the show. And then two is that we've been together for a lot of life, like over a decade at this point. And so we've been through the ups and downs of being in our 20s and entering our 30s and how life changes along those lines. And Erica's story is no different than any other. Why am I crying already? I'm so proud of you that it's starting to come out already. And her story is no different than anyone else's that we've had on the show, where, the bar hopping scene when you're younger and being able to eat whatever you want, to, and I know we'll get into this, to finding out that you're struggling with your thyroid and you couldn't get your weight under control while trying to figure out the chemicals in your body, getting them under control.
You're still not.
And, into the season of getting married and having your first kid and just trying to figure out what healthy really looks like and not necessarily feeling that pressure to bounce back. And so we're going to talk about a lot of things today. And so for our viewers, Erica, who are you? Where you live? What you do?
So I'm Erica. I am a stay-at-home mom. I am with my daughter pretty much 24/7. Minus a few little breaks here and there. She is 2.5. She is my pride and joy. I live in Maryland. I live, less than 10 minutes from the house I grew up in, which just happens to be one neighborhood over from Tiff. So we are local. I am very much a person who thrives being by the water. Grew up here. We have a boat now, so we spend all summer out on the water, constantly. All weekend out in the sun, in the fresh air, just living.
I love that. So we're gonna start here. Okay. What does healthy mean to you right now?
So right now, the big things for me are being able to play with Emily, being able to be on the go with her. Because there are days where it's, we start the day at, 6 or 7 when she wakes up, and it is nonstop. There are days where there's no nap, and I have to be able to, one, mentally get through the challenges of toddler tantrums and toddler struggles and emotions and big, big feelings without losing my cool, because I have to support her. It also just means I have to have the energy and the ability to get on and off the floor with her all day. I have to be able to, okay, you're losing it. Let's go for a walk. Let me get you in the stroller. Let's go. You want to go to the zoo? We're going to go walk the zoo all day. I need to be able to carry her. I need to be able to carry all the stuff or push the stroller with all the stuff and chase her. And, those are the big things for me right now. Being able to be wherever I need to be in the moment.
Being able to live your life without it being a struggle.
Mm-hmm.
Is that different than what you would have defined healthy a decade ago?
For sure. A decade ago, if I saw myself right now, I'd have been like, I am not anywhere near the size I was a decade ago. I am, I'm not pushing for a certain weight. I'm not pushing to be a certain size. I'm not defined by what the number on my clothes is. I'm not defined by the number on the scale. And I know, and I knew then, but it was harder to separate it. I knew that my value wasn't determined by my weight or my clothes or what shape my body was. There's a lot more concern in appearance then, and that side of it, which, that's not invalid, but it's not where I'm at now.
Yeah. I think there is that you were just sharing about how, earlier in your life, it was a little bit more about the size and appearance and what that meant to the world, as well as feeling good about yourself. And now it's less about the size and the appearance and more about like being able to do all the things you need to do as a mom.
Yeah.
With the energy and confidence and feeling good in yourself. And when you were sharing that part, one thing that I have always admired about you, one of the things I've always admired about you is that you are always true to yourself. Like you're very good at knowing what season you're in and not letting other people's judgments and opinions of what they think you should be. Like, yeah, maybe it might hurt sometimes, but like that never changes the path that you're on.
Right. It doesn't change who I am or who I see myself as. You know, doesn't mean that there's not anything valid from what they're seeing or what they're saying or what their thoughts are, but that it's not the whole story. Nobody else gets the whole story. You know, family, husbands, you know, all of that. Nobody gets the whole story. Nobody else is seeing and putting every element of it. So yes, their opinion can have some weight, but it doesn't change who I am or you know.
And that's something that I've learned from you is being able to like really listen in and be okay with like my opinions and like how I see myself and allowing that to be my value and not necessarily what someone else like.
We knew this was gonna happen. We knew this was gonna happen, bro. We can't have conversations.
We cannot. Oh, but I mean, like, there's just been so many times in our life together where, like, even the time when I had that really bad breakup with that ended in the domestic abuse and all of the things, and I was so worried about our friend group having to choose. And you're like, no, like, I'm with you. And I was just like, you don't have to choose. And I remember you saying, why would I want to be friends with someone who is capable of doing the things that they did to you? Like, those people don't belong in my life.
They don't.
And that was a complete, like, it was like blew up my whole world in my reality of like going through that experience, because it was like, oh, like I was so worried because the person that I had just ended that relationship with was trying to own people. And like they're my friend and you can't have them.
You only had them as a friend because of me. If it weren't for me, they wouldn't have cared about you. And that was all wrong. One, like let's be real. He was tolerated by a lot of people for you. It wasn't that like it was kind of the opposite there, sweetie.
But I also there were people in that friend group who
didn't want to take sides.
Didn't want to take sides or couldn't believe that he would do those things and thought. And so like I was trying to navigate that through my own stuff being in it. And when you were like, why would I be friends with someone? I wouldn't be friends with someone who is capable of doing the things that they just did to you. And that just exploded my brain because I was just like, duh. Like, yes. And so you've always had that insight and that wisdom. And like, I've always just admired you for it because it is just really, I don't know, I just learned so much from you for that. And so what about so we talked a little bit about thyroid. So how did you determine that things were not right and what happened?
Okay, so that goes back all the way to 2014. So I think it was the left side first. I think that part's been so long it doesn't even matter. But I had a massive, massive, massive cyst inside of my thyroid that, like, I don't know if you remember, like my neck had a bump all the time. And if I looked up, it looked like a cancerous growth was trying to burst out of my neck. Like it was insane. Everybody always thought everybody always thought that it was like, oh, that has to hurt. No, it wasn't even something that like was kind of there and then it got bigger and bigger and bigger. Like it kind of just showed up out of nowhere. So go to the doctor and they're like, oh, you need to see the endocrinologist. Like you're going to go there. So I go there, they try and do a biopsy to just see what it was. And all she was able to draw out was basically dried blood in there. And they couldn't get anything else out. They couldn't get it to come down at all. So she's like, you know what, we're going to send you to surgeon because with the size of that cyst, so your thyroid, you have two glands, one per side of your neck. Each gland is generally only maybe a couple centimeters max. My cyst alone was 7 centimeters end to end, and that's not
Holy
talking about
crap.
width. That's
I
not
mean, I
talking-
remember your scar being really big, like really long.
Mhm.
That's huge.
So it was huge, and it was this way. So my thyroid had grown, like had to stretch with that. So that side really wasn't functioning, wasn't doing anything anyway, because at that point there's no room for it to do what it needs to do. So I go to surgeon, she removes that side. All right, cool. So we keep monitoring the other side, and it's normal. Well, it's common. I don't know if it's normal, but common for people to have cysts in their thyroid, and they won't even bother to.
Really?
Yeah, it's a pretty common spot. So it's so common that they won't like check them. They'll kind of monitor, check out, see what's up, but they won't try to do a biopsy. They won't do any of that unless a cyst is above a certain size. So 2 years later, so it's 2014, now it's 2016. I go back in for, just my annual appointment with the endocrinologist. And she's like, you have one, it's a little bigger than I'd like. We're going to go ahead and do a biopsy. So we do a biopsy. Those results are completely inconclusive. So she's like, we're going to do another test, which we have to send off for. And that one, even like fighting with insurance and whatnot, that one cost me like $400 out of pocket, which sounded wild, but that's your in-depth testing. That is the most conclusive testing that they can do on these things. So we do that one, and that comes back as a greater than 40% chance of it being malignant. So I'm like, well, that's got to go, because I'm not keeping something that's potentially cancerous in my body if I know about it. So had that removed, and it has been a 7.5-year-long journey of still not being balanced with the replacement hormone. So I've taken Thyroid, which is the name brand, and then I've been on the generic for, I don't know, several years. The name brand seemed to be a little bit more consistent for me. But generic's supposed to be exactly the same, but there's enough evidence out there that they literally tell you that the name brand tends to work better for people. But my insurance decided they didn't want to cover name brand without prior approval or whatever. And my doctor was like, no, you can take the generic, it's fine. So I've been up and down in what doses I'm taking and in how those doses react with my body. Like right now, I am taking 150 micrograms 4 days a week and 175 3 days a week, which are both very high doses. And there's nothing between those two, because you start with really small dose increases. Like, I started, my first dose was 88 micrograms, and then I went to 100, and then 112, and 125, 137, 150, 175. I should be, based on all of their calculations and like what, should be about the right dose, I should be about 112. 112, I do not function as a human.
So what does that feel like? So when your thyroids are out of whack and you've had removed, and now you're on synthetic medications to help you balance, like what does being off feel like? I know there's times where, like, when your dosages are off, like you can't leave the house because the bathroom is a legit thing.
Like that's a very legitimate concern. I can't be too far. That's a hyper. My dose is too high.
Okay.
So when it's low, a lot of the symptoms kind of mirror depression, and it can also cause depression as one of the symptoms, which
hormones, funny thing,
right? I know.
Who knew that your balance could affect your
everything,
mental state,
right? So I remember, it was within like the first 4 months after I had it completely removed, and we had already increased from the initial dose from the surgeon to the next level. And I was like, I'm still not right, and my doctor wanted to push out to 6 months, which is strange to me anyway, looking at it now, because anytime we adjust my dose right now, I am back in the office within like 3 to 4 months to check and see if that's where we need to be. They generally won't check thyroid adjustments before like the absolute earliest of 6 weeks, because that's how long it takes
for your body to like find its balance.
But ideally it's closer to the 3-month mark. But she assumed that because she did the calculations and this is what the dose should be, like, oh, we'll just check in 6 months, it'll be fine. And I'm calling and I'm like, look, something's not right. I'm not feeling like myself. So for me, I was so hypothyroid at that point that I couldn't focus. I have always, all my life, some of my earliest memories are reading. I like by myself on the floor. I had a whole case of Little Mermaid books where the case was shaped like a treasure chest. And I remember it so clearly. Like it's the whole books, like I loved them. And they're like think like the little golden books type, like that type of book. So some of my earliest memories are me sitting on my floor in my room reading those by myself. I think because it's a little in that box. And I have never found that box again. I don't know what happened to it. Which is heartbreaking. But I've always been a reader all my life. I can tell you details about books I read 10 years ago. I might not be able to tell you the name of the book or the author or the characters' names, but I can tell you the story itself. I couldn't read a page. I had such trouble focusing that I could barely get through a paragraph before like it was gone. I couldn't remember it. And I was like, this isn't right.
Now, do the doctors listen when you said it, or did you are you learning how to advocate for your fitness?
Really the first time I really had to advocate for myself with the doctor. And I was like, look, it's not right. And she's like, well, and I'm going over everything that I was struggling with. And she was like, this all just sounds like depression to me. Like, what are you going to do when it's just depression? And I was like, I'll cross that bridge when I get there. Let's run the blood test and just rule this out because this is the only thing in my life that has changed.
Yeah.
And she was like, well, it sounded well. Finally get her to agree. We run the blood test. And then she calls me to give me the results. I answer the phone, and the first thing she tells me once she verifies it's me on the phone, well, you were right. Gee, who knew? And it was so hard for you to order a blood test.
Yeah.
That's all you had to do. Wasn't that she had to do the work. She didn't have to do lab work. She didn't have to do
It's such a hard place to be too, because there's that as a patient, you're going to the doctor because you're like, I didn't go to med school.
Right.
But I am the expert in what my body feels like. And so I think it's really, really important, one, to find a doctor that you feel comfortable having those, even if it's uncomfortable, those respectful pushes of like really being in tune. And then, like you said, like advocating for yourself of being like, this isn't right, because I don't think a doctor is ever ill-intentioned. I think that they're going off of the majority of the examples and things that have come through their office and how many times like someone said that it was something was off and it ended up being depression
or something else.
But like you got to find a doctor who's willing to like hear you and then educate you either why not, or say, you know what, let's do the blood. Let's roll it.
That's because that is such an easy way to roll that out. It's so low impact. It's not like I'm saying, hey, send me for some expensive, an MRI,
a $30,000 workup, please.
Right. Like I'm saying, let me go to LabCorp, which is in the same building that you're in, and I will go stick my arm out. They'll stick a needle, and I'll have
and then they'll send me a bill, and I'll pay it.
Right. It cost me $20. Like it's fine. It's good. We're good. And I think at that time it was free because of insurance changes. But whatever. But I asked her on that call, because I didn't ask her after that, my very first adjustment. I didn't ask her what level I was at. She had told me I was hypo and we needed to increase. And I didn't ask her how far off I was. So the charts, the healthy range for a thyroid level is it's based on your TSH, your thyroid stimulating hormone, which is your pituitary gland in your brain creates this thyroid stimulating hormone that tells your thyroid to create more or less. So to know whether you are hypo or hyper or balanced, they check your TSH level primarily. My initial TSH level after that first dose set by the surgeon came back at like a 22. The healthy range is 4.5 to 0.4.
Holy crap.
I was off the chart.
That's not even near the chart.
I was so
That's not even off the charts. That's like out of the planet.
I'm gone.
You're in a different universe.
I don't understand. So when she increased my dose and we checked it again, I was like, so what am I at now? And she's like, well, you're at a 16. And I was like, excuse me? What? And that's when she said, well, you were at 22 and now you're at 16. Like, so I'm still low. Okay, great. So she increased my dose. And I was like, after how hard I had to fight with her to get her to order a blood test, I was like, I can't, because one, you're dismissive of anything, not looking at the fact that the only change in my life is that I've had my thyroid removed, and that, like, there could be something here, especially considering how far off the chart it was at one level before.
Now, did you notice any positive changes? Well, you didn't know there was anything other than having the lump. You didn't really have a lot of
I had
symptoms
no symptoms prior.
So after it was removed, did they, other than like needing to now
Figure everything out,
figure the hormone balance part out, because your hormone maker has been removed,
right?
Were there any other, like, did you notice any other changes?
But again, everything that I've been focused on since has been hormone related. And, you know, like, I didn't have any issues prior. Like, even when I just had the one side, my level was at a 1.9 for TSH. They checked me prior to surgery. So that's
Just with your thyroid balancing. Is that what you call it? What do you even call it? Your thyroid what?
I just call it my dose at this point, because that's constantly what's changing. It's so up and down.
Are there other challenges in your life other than the like not feeling right in your body that you've noticed or that you're battling? And if so, how are you navigating that?
So some of the big things with the thyroid is it affects your energy level, it affects your mood, it affects your metabolism, your sleep, your, like, essentially everything. It affects your cycle for women, which luckily I haven't had too much chaos with that. For me, it's been more of how heavy my flow is, not whether or not I'm consistent or whether or not, like, because for some people, if you're too far on the high end, you won't get a cycle at all. Or if you're too far on the low end, it basically never stops.
That sounds horrible.
Or you bleed so heavy that it's like out of control, or you are so late that it's essentially just spotting. And, you know, like, your cycle for women, especially, that's so related to your fertility, your ability to create a family. So for me, there were a lot of concerns for me personally. I don't know that my doctor was as concerned, but for me, when we were trying, especially given the miscarriage that I had, you know, and so thyroid levels can play a role in ability to carry a baby. And my thyroid levels were kind of lacking when I had miscarriage. So I don't know.
You don't know if your thyroid helped contribute to the miscarriage, if the miscarriage was contributing to your hormones being off,
right?
Or if they were completely unrelated. You'll never know.
Right. There is no answer. Yeah. So just part of the problem with why we haven't found a consistent dose for me in the last 7 years is that I can take the same dose at different times and my body reacts completely differently. So
different times being different times in the day?
No. Different times over the last few years. So when Emily was born, we put me on 150 micrograms, which is, again, it's a fairly high dose. And I was like sky high hyperthyroid, like to the point where I went to the doctor and she's like, "Are you having heart palpitation?" Like she was genuinely worried. Ladies today. All the time.
Without fail.
That's fine. Really?
Oh yeah. Oh wait, I don't know if you know this. I'm on the turnaround spot. My leg is the turnaround. And sometimes people say they don't hear it, and other times people are like, "Oh yeah, I can hear that." So I don't know what the truth is.
I think you hear some of it.
And I don't know if it's different with like just recording on my phone versus the microphone. I don't know if one of them like
makes it up more.
Yeah. I'll know that it's time to cut because it'll be me actually looking at the camera and not at you.
Yeah, so I went to the doctor and she's literally concerned, like genuinely worried. And I could see it in her face. And I was like, oh, okay. So I am definitely high. And that's on 150. So he set me back to 137. My first check, I was kind of in the right zone. So we left it, for a few more months. And then by the time I saw her again, I was,
Question though
yeah.
is you were talking about how like depending on different times that you take it. Now, is that because like your natural hormone fluctuations?
I have no idea.
Or is it like
I have no idea. At one point, she actually sent me for testing because there are some people, apparently I am not one of them, but there are some people who produce an antibody that reacts with the thyroid meds that keep you from absorbing it properly. So we checked for that. That's not the case for me. That's not why we still aren't right.
Is it normal for people to have those many back and forths that you've had?
No.
Oh.
No. So
I only know your story. You're my only experience with this.
It's not normal because every time we're like, we're gonna up you, we're gonna come back down, we're gonna up, we're gonna come, and we're dancing around the same few dose levels. Like for the last few years, I've been fluctuating between taking 137, 150, and 175. The last time prior to getting pregnant with Emily, the last time I took 175, that was the time that I could not leave my house. So hyperthyroid symptoms, like everything runs fast.
It was like so bad. It was the first time I think as friends we ever talked about bathroom stuff because like you didn't have an option.
You were trying to invite me to do something. I was like, I literally can't leave my house. Like I can't be more than like 10 steps from a bathroom. Basically hyperthyroid for me at least seems like everything speeds up. It speeds up my, like I talk faster. I have more energy, which of all the side effects, having more energy is not the worst. I don't mind that one. I'd rather have more energy than be like sluggish and slow and
my leggings are falling off.
Pull them up. So I like the high energy, I don't mind, but I don't need for some people it's insomnia. For me, it's a little bit less sleep. It's not necessarily to the point where I'm not sleeping at all. It speeds up your metabolism. So hypothyroid, it is really easy to gain weight and very, very hard to lose. Hyper is the opposite. You'll drop weight real fast. And if you're trying to gain, which I'm never, but for the people who are starting at a lower weight, who are trying to put mass on their bodies, it's very, very hard to do if you are hyperthyroid. So the last time I took 175 prior to having a baby, I dropped at least 5 pounds in a week. And that weight stayed off for a few months, which was nice. Of all of the consequences, that wasn't a bad one for me. But in general, when I'm more towards the hyper side of the scale, the high side of the scale, I tend to feel okay. So long as I'm not so far hyper that we are worried about heart palpitations. And I'm not worried about not being able to leave my house, and I'm not worried about, all of those things. But so 175 used to be like, nope, we're going to write that one off. We're not going to take it. And then, it was 150 and 137 and we were dancing there and trying to figure that out. And then after I had her and I was on the 150 for a while, that was too high. So we went to the 137 and I came back again off the freaking charge. I was again at 13. And I was like, this is insane. So we went back to the 150 and that's still not enough. So then we added in 2 days a week at 175. And now
instead of going all just kind of like the changing the doses here and there. Mm-hmm. What would you, based off of your last 7 years of, I'm sure it's exhausting, and at some point you're just like, I don't even care anymore. Does that happen?
There are days. But at the same time, I'm like, I know if I don't get it right, that there are long-term consequences. Like if I just gave up and stopped taking the meds completely, like I would not function as a human. If I just stay super high, I increase my risk of like osteoporosis, of heart issues, blood pressure issues. Like there are a lot of things that go
What are the
along with that.
consequences of staying low if you had like you went the other way?
I'm not sure what they all are, but I don't want to live that way because I am so like I end up so low energy and so I struggle so hard to find joy and like to really like overall I tend to be fairly neutral to happy. Like that is kind of my
You're a
baseline.
very steady person.
When I am more on the low scale, it is harder to find the happy side of things, and I am more neutral to negative. So it's not the way that I want to look because it changes your brain chemistry, it changes your body chemistry. So at this point, I already like I have a plan. If I go in, my next appointment is in February, beginning of February, right before I go run the Princess Challenge.
Yeah.
Like this is a great time. If I have to change things, it's a great time.
It'll be a great time.
Like,
Porta potties everywhere.
3 weeks prior to going to run a half marathon. Woohoo! You know, like let's change doses. Hopefully not. Hopefully we're right. I don't know. But I already have a plan in place of like, okay, if I'm still not right, I'm going to ask about switching. There is a natural version, which is made from, I believe it's pig thyroid. But it's harder to be consistent with that one. And so that one replaces, so you have a thyroid. Your thyroid produces T3 and T4. I am only getting T4. So I might be somebody who needs T3. But T3,
I feel like if I'm producing both, then you probably need both.
but most people can function with just one.
But it doesn't sound optimal to me.
It's not optimal, but it works for the majority, which is why most people go for the synthetic. And it's why I've been doing this dance for 7 years. But with that one, it replaces T3 and T4. T4 is like a 24-hour dose. The half-life of T4 is much, much longer. For T3, you take it in the morning and by evening it's gone. You're like there is
your body utilizes
the T3 very quickly. So some people take 2 doses a day on that, which might mean that I have to take a smaller dose because then I don't want to go too high on the T4 because that has its own consequences. So I need to ask questions next time I go in. So I already have a list of questions that I am like ready to add to as things occur. So that I am ready when I go in.
So if someone's listening to us chit chat right now about thyroids and they're starting this, like realizing that there's a thyroid issue from them and maybe they've had theirs removed as well. And they're in this, like, what would you say to them? What advice do you have to help them stay on track if you had to give like your best 3 to 5 tips?
So one, I would do at least basic research so that you know what your symptoms are, what you're watching for on either end. Don't be afraid to ask your doctor for a blood test sooner. Like if they, so right now, the way that we try to space my blood tests and like dose adjustments and whatnot is, we'll do the adjustment and we'll check it 3 months later to see. If that's right, then we bump out to 6 months before the next test. If that's still right, then you can go a year. If it's not right, you're checking like every 3 months. Don't be afraid to call and ask to be checked sooner. And if they argue, like, it's a blood test. It's a simple test. Also, it wouldn't hurt to check a full hormone panel, because it does interact. So for me, I know part of what played with it was also birth control, which I have not been on since 2019 when I came off in the first place. But because those are both hormones that you're taking, they can, like, you need to take them at different times of day because they can keep the other one from being absorbed and working properly. So if you are on birth control and you are on a thyroid hormone, I would suggest taking them at different times, 1 in the morning, 1 at night. Generally, they recommend thyroid stuff in the morning. I don't know the reason, but they always recommend first thing in the morning, nothing in your stomach, whatever. So there's that. I would say, you can still make changes even when it's harder. Like, I can still build strength. I might not drop the weight the way I want to, or I might not see all of the physical results that I want, but I can still build the strength and the endurance and the stamina. And then if or when we get my hormones right, the weight should come right off. You know.
I love that you just said that because it's 2023 right now, like when we're recording this, and like redefining healthy and learning what that looks like for you. And I know that I've had people come through calls with me who, oh, I think my thyroid's out. I just will never be able to be skinny. Why does it matter? And it's like, it has nothing to do with that. And it's more about like, okay, so your body is changing. So what does healthy look like for you now without you throwing up your hands and giving up? Because there's this whole life left in front of you. And like, do you really want to live it from this place of, I feel horrible, I am horrible, nothing in the world is right for me, and this is just the way it is? Or do you want to do the things that make you feel good? I call them habits of a healthy human, and just not like, who cares about your pant size? Like, do you feel good in your skin? And do you have the energy to live your life? And
I think somebody's.
I think that sounds like a trash truck.
Yeah.
And so I love that you share that, because that is redefining the definition of healthy compared to what maybe healthy was for you before. And I think that's a really good message for everyone, whether you're dealing with a thyroid or not.
Is work with what you can.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm not in control right now of my hormone levels and, you know, what that's doing to my metabolism, what that's doing with weight gain, weight loss, all of that. Like, that is very much a struggle. Like, I can do all of the things. I can drink nothing but water and eat as clean as I do, or, you know, as clean as I ever do, which for me is not the best. I am a very picky eater. I have some issues with like textures of veggies and things
She
like that.
hates vegetables.
I do. It's more of a texture thing than a taste thing, 99% of the time. Textures of most vegetables, just like, I can't, I gag. It's not good. It's not good.
The first time I met your mom, and she was like, "Can you help my daughter eat more vegetables?" And we figure out how to have food. You're like 25 years old. And
exactly. So,
oh Lord.
working on it, especially since I have a toddler. You know,
That is true. You've been more adventurous in your food choices since having Emily, like, in really trying. With that, that's Humans Talking this week. Erica, how do people connect with you if
they want to hear more?
If they want to hear more, or if they're just like, you know, she's pretty cool, I want to be friends with her, or follow her story, or see what, you know, like, I'm a mom too, and they just felt connected to you. So how do they find you?
So I am on Facebook. It's Erica Williams.
Cool.
Easy enough. Or Instagram, it's at EricaLynn1321.
Cool. I'll put those in the show notes. And so if you are struggling with your thyroid issues, or if you know someone who has been, I hope that this episode was enlightening for you, and feel free to share. We'll see you next time. Bye.